Hello and welcome to Roblox's very first Tech Innovation and Innovators panel. I'm delighted to welcome you here where we are going to be talking today about innovation and some of the challenges that come with that, including scaling. I am Aleks Krotoski. I am your host for today. Just so you know, my background is that I've been active and interested in virtual worlds, the metaverse for, a long time now. And so I'm really delighted to be able to speak with and investigate some of the things that our Roblox panel are going to be discussing today. I am joined by Roblox Chief Technology Officer, Dan Sturman. Thank you very much for coming, and also some of our other senior engineering leaders. We are looking forward to a very lively discussion. This is how it's going to work. Today, we have a live audience here, as well as our live contributors, but we also have a very large, and welcome to you all, virtual audience. I get to ask the questions for the first, say, 45 minutes, but then you get to ask the questions afterwards. This is exclusively, by the way, I apologize for our live audience here. This is exclusively for our virtual audience who are coming from across North America. So make sure that you have some questions, add them into the chat box, and we will get them asked at the end of my part, which is where I get to ask the questions. So without further ado, I want to introduce each of our panel members. And I'm going to start with Dan Sturman. Tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do here at Roblox.
Sure. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer. I lead the engineering team. And a little bit about myself, pretty simple career. I've spent some time at Cloudera, at Google, even IBM. Started as a researcher. I'm not doing that anymore. So, you know, that's kind of where I come from. A very different bent than what you might expect at Roblox. Deep systems work has been most of what I've been doing. So having a great time here, though.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. And our next guest is Kiran Bhat. And Kiran, you are the Senior Director of Engineering Avatars. Tell me a little bit about yourself and also about Avatars team.
Yeah, so I lead the face team within Avatars. We are trying to bring more emotions to Roblox faces and Roblox characters. That's what we do as a team. And I joined Roblox almost a year and a half ago as part of an acquisition by Roblox. My company, Loom AI, that I co-founded with Mahesh, was acquired by Roblox. And we built 3D avatars for mobile. And before that, I was at Lucasfilm, where I led the facial capture R&D and worked on a bunch of blockbuster movies. Excited to be here and to be part of this panel.
I love Avatar because Avatar is, of course, as a social psychologist, I forgot to mention that, that's how people really identify with their character. So I'm looking forward to hearing a lot about how you are implementing new innovations into this space. Next up, we have Kavita Kanetkar, who is the Director of Engineering Economy. This is also a really interesting area of the metaverse and virtual worlds. Tell me a little bit about yourself and then about the economy team.
Yeah, I lead economy engineering. So economy, the reason why we call this org economy is it's not just top line, bottom line revenue, it's revenue plus. We also take care about what happens when you convert the fiat currency into Robux, which is our virtual currency, and how that keeps circulating on our platform.
It's so interesting. This is an area that really drew me into this space in the first place, this idea of the true value of what's going on inside these virtual environments. Tell me a little bit about yourself, though, before we dive into too much about economy.
Yeah, so before, I've been at Roblox for a year and a half, and before that, I was director of ads infrastructure at Twitter, and before that, companies like Redfin and Google for 7 years doing PageRank infrastructure.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. And last but not least, we have Antoni, Choudhuri, and welcome. You are the Director of Engineering, but for developer. Tell me a little bit about yourself and then about developer.
Yeah, thanks. Like you said, I work in the developer group. I've been with Roblox for over 10 years now. I joined as an individual contributor and moved into manage about 3 years in. And I've been all over the company, 5 different teams. I was working on economy before. I've done trust and safety. Growth, so I've got to see a different perspective from the company from all different sides, and it's been really just great. But yeah, I've been in developer for the last 2.5 years. I work on the people who are creating on the Roblox platform, and we're really focused on making sure that everyone can realize their imagination as fast as they can and as efficiently as they can. And so the creations from the people on the platform is what everyone comes to Roblox for. And so that's, we have to make sure that that flywheel continues, it's healthy, as well as the incentives are lined up. So lots of challenging problems there too.
You've seen a lot of change at Roblox over the last 10 years. And I'm very curious how you've seen the culture within the company manage with how quickly it's scaled from, from this side, from the developer side.
Yeah, I think a few things obviously have changed and some things haven't. I go back to my first interview with Dave. We were at a coffee shop, and the vision he pitched when he was explaining Roblox to me has not changed at all. It's almost one-to-one exactly the same that we would pitch candidates today. It has not changed in 10 and a half years, and I think there's a lot to say for that, and I think that is a big reason why I've stayed and why I've really loved my job. And I think the things of changing has been with the company growing, obviously going from 30 or 50 employees up to where we are now, I think probably around 1,800 or something. Processes have gotten better, and we've learned so much, and so it's been just a wild ride, and I love it.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm going to dig into some of that in a little bit, but first I want to leap over to Dan and ask you some of the more fundamental questions. Since we are talking today about innovation, I was hoping you might do the easy job of defining what innovation is for Roblox.
Sure. So first, I guess, just explain what Roblox is and what we're trying to do. It's a pretty grand vision. And what we're aiming to do is build a platform that enables creators to build these immersive 3D social experiences. And the emphasis here is on creators and platform, and that we don't know what they will create. Our whole goal, as Antoni was mentioning, is to make it so whatever awesome idea you have for a world which you're experiencing in 3D that you're bringing the people together in, you can create as fast and easily as possible. And what's great about that is we don't have to have the great ideas about what's going to appear on this platform. We have a huge community, 10 million plus, that are building things and creating them. So then why does that need innovation? Well, because while we've been doing this for 16 years, we have so much more to go. And we have such kind of a grand vision on where we're going to take this and what the future of this looks like. Everything from, facial expression on avatars, to a vibrant economy that is like any good economy, a lot of cycling of economic resources within them, to just scaling across the globe and bringing people together who would never be able to be together in an immersive experience. People playing from Germany to Japan to South Africa, right? And bringing all of that together. So all that requires a lot of innovation because it has been built before. And basically, everywhere we turn, we have a new, what I'll call open problem that needs to be solved. And there's no one to go copy, right? A lot of these things are all novel and new for us or for anyone. And so we really have to push on the innovation because we can't just rely on, oh, here's the playbook way to address these things.
You're also dealing as a growing company with a growing audience as well. So that requires innovation and thoughtfulness as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you're tackling that from an engineering point of view?
Yeah, and it's growing in many dimensions. Obviously, it's growing in like just sheer numbers. There's more people on Roblox every single day, both as creators and as users in those experiences. But it's also growing in the demographics, the countries we're in, the languages they speak, the age categories and age groups they're in. As these experiences grow, that brings new sorts of users onto the platform. And so that can mean everything from how do we deal with translation in real time when you're dealing with different languages and different demographics. How do we serve effectively across the world for rich, real-time, 30 frame per second sort of experiences, no matter where you are on the globe, to as ages change, how might rules of engagement and the way you experience the platform might change with that. And one other thing, what device are you bringing to it, right? That's another point, right? So you got everything now from PCs, but also phones to virtual reality devices to whatever you might imagine. And they're all going to enable consumption of the platform in a different way. And we need to make all of that work too. So there's really a lot of dimensions of scalability. And we need to tackle all of those. And that really gives us some interesting, unique challenges.
Yeah, and you need to tackle them quickly because Roblox's numbers are like, they're going sky high. And
that's right. Yeah, we always feel a little bit of pressure to just kind of keep up with what's going on.
Now, I can see how economy would be something that would be, that would translate across, the scale issues. But I'm interested in some of the other technologies as well. I want to talk a bit about economy and how you're going to do that. But first, Kiran, I wanted to talk a little bit about Avatar and what some of these opportunities for innovation that Dan is talking about, how you're tackling them, some of the projects that you're most excited about within the Avatar deck?
Yeah, avatars are the way users express themselves in Roblox, and it's a 3D medium. So it's been there, but it's also a new medium for interacting and communicating, and that's the new thing that we are working on to bring expressive avatars that can communicate with facial tracking and what have you. But what makes Roblox interesting is that there is no specific style for what an avatar is. That's actually decided by the developers. So the breadth of creativity of what an avatar could be, the representation of your character, makes this a very, very challenging problem. So most traditional computer graphics techniques that assume that an avatar has a specific geometry and a specific rig, those things don't work at Roblox scale. So that's a big area of innovation for us. Another important area is what Dan mentioned. Our users use all kinds of different devices, and many of them are mobile devices, mid-range devices, which are not don't have the most advanced CPUs. So a challenge in bringing these advanced technologies is to formulate it in a way where it runs efficiently on all kinds of devices on the platform that the platform supports. So it's a combination of advanced technology, the breadth of creativity, and the variety of devices that avatars have to run on. So it's a very challenging problem.
Have you guys had any really cool wins in those two categories that you can talk about?
Yeah, I think we've been able to standardize what we call the schema, the representation, the DNA of what an avatar should be. That works across the variety of characters that we see on the platform. So that is absolutely a non-trivial thing to do, but that's something that we've been very careful in defining, and we've seen some early wins. We've also seen some early wins in bringing our tracking technologies to mobile and to run efficiently on mobile hardware. So more on that in the coming months, but it's very active areas.
Oh, that's very exciting. Kavita, the different platforms that people are using Roblox on, economy doesn't really play into that, or does it? Are there different elements of economy that you guys are thinking about than I have in my head?
No, so economy is behind the scenes work to enable, trading of an item, the thriving marketplace, a thriving monetization and ad system across all devices. So the way I think about economy is the way countries think about their GDP. We call it RDP, right? It's not just about top line and bottom line. You have to make sure what happens to the virtual currency and how it's circulated in various experiences. So one part of the org is, everything that deals with fiat currencies, which is we are worldwide. So whatever the local currency is, how that converts into Robux. So we have teams focusing on billing payment, the billing fraud that happens, how to control that. And then ads and subscriptions. And once the dollar or the fiat currency is converted into Robux, we have other part of the team that is more user-facing, which is marketplace, search and discovery, and engagement-based teams.
One of the things that I've seen in other virtual worlds in the past is that you've, for want of a better word, you had sweatshops emerging, for example, in Second Life when Linden Bucks was the big thing that everybody wanted to grab hold of. How much of that kind of thing, that kind of controlling the economy and making sure the economy is operating respectfully, I guess is a way to think about it. How much is that your team and the way you're tackling it?
Yeah, so the way we think about economy is very much modeled to the real world. So when we think about ads, we are thinking about it very decentralized way, right? Like what developers want to include in their experience, whether it's a billboard or a portal. And imagine you're in an experience, you're enjoying the experience, and you see a portal, and you enter the portal, and suddenly you're in this Nike store, and your avatar is trying out shoes and hats, and suddenly you're making a real-world transaction. So it's the whole mix of. I come from an ad tech background where it was very boxed thinking. It's either brand ads or performance ads, and brands care only about reach and frequency and how many people have seen that brand, and then performance is about did you buy the item? And we have this unique opportunity to combine all of that and make it into an immersive experience. So we truly believe that we can have ads that are effective and that are not hurting the engagement on the platform.
what's some of the tech that you're building in order to make that happen?
Yeah, so that's the exciting part. It's never been done before. Like this is new to ad tech, right? Metaverse ads. What are they? Are they immersive ads? Are they billboards? Are they portals? So we are trying out a lot of that. And so as you can see, the innovation comes from ad formats. And I'm sure months from now we'll be experimenting with formats we are not even thinking about right now. So that's super exciting. And the other side of economy is the marketplace, right? We are thinking about user-generated content and limited items. So each individual at the scale that we operate, like millions of items traded every day, it really becomes a technology challenge. User-generated content, anybody can create unique hats or jackets or what have you, and upload into the marketplace, and the item gets sold, bought, many times traded, retraded. And how do you do that real time, safely, securely, at scale? That's again a large technology challenge that we have. And parallelly, we're also thinking about building this supercomputer which has dynamic pricing. It's like how many, like limited, right? Should it be 5 copies, 5,000 copies? What should be the price? How long should it be in marketplace? So that the dynamic real-time pricing aspect is at scale is just also technologically challenging. And considering domain, it's like a lot of distributed systems, machine learning at scale, and if you think about ad formats, it's all about creative UI problems.
Do you have economists on your team as well? Give you some parameters.
So we work very closely with finance. So yes, we do deal with. Yes.
Yes. We'll just leave it at that.
Yes.
I'm going to jump over to Antoni because we have been talking, like the word developer has come up several times. And this is an area that is close to your heart. You're working with the community. It's essential for Roblox to innovate, right? Not just within, but also to make sure that the platform innovates for the developers in order to innovate. I mean, there's a lot of innovate going on here. So I'm wondering how you...
Welcome to Roblox.
Yeah, I feel innovated all over. I'm wondering how your team is innovating in innovation for the developer.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's been a big focus for the last few years that we can build tools and provide them services when I say them, the developers, but allowing them to build their own tools and their own services and then even distribute them further and let them consume others like a marketplace or an ecosystem. We've seen a lot better results with that. And so I think there has been a shift in the last few years in our thinking that we don't build specific services. And I'll give an example of this, that something like a matchmaking service. If you'd like to build a high-level chess game, like an ELO game, where you can have the best people playing in Korea versus the best people in Europe playing, you need some type of service that can match together based on skill. We could provide a service that does that. Instead of doing that, we would like to actually provide generic abstract services. So what are the computer science data structures that are needed or the data systems to do that same thing? And so we provided a sorted map or a priority queue. And then we saw people in the community build a matchmaking service on top of these things. But on top of that, we saw many other examples of innovation that the developers used that we never had originally intended for. And so by this principle of not building specific or bespoke services and rather building primitives, we've seen a really, really fundamental, the innovation has burgeoned and just taken over. And so that's been a principle that we've really, really tailored for, and I think it's worked out. I think another one is that we'll talk about it more, I believe, later, but open cloud and allowing the developers to build their own pipelines via APIs and having standards and access that's consistent across the platform allows all the developers to really solve their own problems. And so this is something that we're just getting started on, and it's really exciting.
It requires a huge amount of engagement, though, doesn't it, Dan? I mean, it demands that the developers perhaps are incentivized in order to be part of this community. How do you ensure that developers stay with the platform and innovate in a way that you want the technology to be innovated with?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways that happen. I think we've seen first and foremost, people want to get the ideas they have in their head kind of created and shared. Like we see so many Roblox developers start because, I can create this cool thing and share it with a friend and we can play it together immediately. As you put more time in, of course, there are economic incentives behind that, and that's where our economy team comes in. That there are ways to have monetization success with an experience, and of course, with that comes more incentive to work on it. But I think at the core of this is most of our creators just want to create, and it's good that there's also kind of financial rewards when you start putting in hours and hours into something. There needs to be something behind that, but the ability to just imagine some incredible 3D world, to have the tool set that enables you to work on that quickly without a huge outlay of any sort, right? You can create on Roblox for free. There's no charges. There's nothing like that. You just go, you download our tools, you can start building. You're never having to pay a fee to do this or to try it. That's the primary driver, I think, is that creation process.
There is a lot of talk in the world at the moment about interoperability, and I'm wondering where Roblox sort of sits in that. Whether you mentioned standards, etc., Antoni, when you were saying we need to build the tools that the templates, as it were, for the creators to build those things. How are you evolving your thinking when it comes to the next stage of Roblox, and whether the things that you're developing are indeed going to be interoperable? And I don't know if Antoni, you want to take this, or Dan, if you want to take.
I'll start.
All right, and then you can throw over.
I think from our point of view, where we really come from is what are the challenges our developers are facing. So when we think about anything around an open standard, we see absolutely places like around mesh formats and so on, where this is really, really important. I think in other areas, we're waiting to see how things evolve and where it goes, because there's really no point to an open standard if there's not an open community to kind of use that with. So things like open cloud, by the way, publishing our APIs makes it easy for very different tools to come and do different things the way developers want directly into that. So from my point of view, the cart and the horse here, the horse is the ability to do what you need to do to be a creator. The cart would be an open standard that might fit that when that makes it faster, makes tool interop better, makes interop with other platforms better because of that experience you're trying to create or bring to life.
Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that's spot on. I think we've focused a lot on, importing, ingesting into our platform, and we've seen the developer community build things like a Blender plugin to import a mesh and this type of plugin. But when I think you're kind of hinting at like a Web3 asset or something where I could import that. And I think Dan's answer is correct here, which is it's a horse and a cart problem, which it's an unlaid land yet. And I think we just want to see what the community and the industry is doing here. And I think there's a lot of interesting innovations that we're following. But I think that right now we're focusing on the needs of our developers and the community and our creators.
It's a really fine dance, isn't it? Because when you do have, and it's for every single one of you. I know that, for example, in Avatar, the minute you change Avatar, people freak out because they're like, this isn't what my avatar is supposed to look like. You've done something. And, and when you're dealing with economy, flooding the economy with a currency, people freak out. So you're dealing with a very sensitive and increasingly large vocal group of people. How do you balance that within your team? So how would you balance what the developers need versus what the platform needs?
So one fundamental rule we have that's very important across everything we do, we don't actually go and surprise you by breaking things. It makes our development in many cases much slower. Like in the case of we launched new avatars with layered clothing. That could not launch until we had 100% baked in the way our avatars look today, and it could be expressed within that framework. And we do this across the board. And it does slow us down because having 100% reverse compatibility, like kind of forever, is really hard. Yeah. And it's part of the reason it goes to a kind of our innovation framework. We work really hard on strategy and forward plans because every API is forever. Right? So that is a core part of how we operate, a core part of Roblox. That's respecting our developers, respecting our community, that we don't go and surprise them and break things on them. Your avatar will not change unless you want it to change. There may be new features you can enable, new things you go do, or you could choose not to take advantage of them. Right? So I'll let the others chime in with more examples on that, but that's one of the core things in how we operate at Roblox is we don't go break things on people, we don't surprise you with things.
Yeah, and that's actually really nice for engineers as well, is to know that you have a very clear roadmap for where you're going, that you're supportive in this space.
That's right,
Yeah, but that also means that, when you do put out a schema for what an avatar is or what a layered clothing item is on an avatar, you have to be cognizant of thinking through the change is maybe 5 to 10 years ahead.
That's fun, though,
And
isn't
so
it?
that's what makes this exciting for our engineers to be working on these problems. And also keeping in mind that the once you put out these primitives, the developers have the creative freedom to make it their own. And so back to your question about breaking an avatar, that concept doesn't exist, because what an avatar is actually decided more by the developers. And whether it's a combination of 15 parts that is on the platform, or it's a bird in your bird simulator game, that's up to the developer. So there's a lot of flexibility, but also some guarantee that these things are backward compatible as we introduce more features.
Yeah, that really does add quite a fun sort of puzzling out, doesn't it?
I think just adding on to the backwards compatibility, Roblox has been around for 15, 16 years, and we have experiences in games that are that old. And I personally have one that is 10 years old. The first kind of when I joined Roblox, I built one, and even now I can go play it. And even though the engine and our platform has advanced so much in a decade, it still works. And people can play it en masse, and I have not touched it in 10 years. And I think there is something to say that our avatars, our engine, our APIs are working as is without anyone touching them for a decade later, and more. I think that's showing that we've done something really right.
Kavita, do you have anything in the economy space?
Yeah, so community and developer community is so core to economy, and people talk about the consumer flywheel part of it, but there is also economic flywheel that's going on, because a lot of developers grew up playing Roblox, and then they become developers, and then they create experiences which draws more users, engaging experience, which monetizes them, and it's just the fascination of the economic flywheel that's going on. And also, we feel that brands are also core part of the community. We want to emulate real world economy, exactly like the virtual world economy. So we are listening to brands. What kind of presence do they want? Do they want a real world commerce? Do they want experiences? Do they want brand awareness? Do they want presence at concerts? Backstage experiences. So a lot of avenues are present to the brands.
Yeah, I've often thought about when it comes to brands inside virtual environments, you want participation rather than colonization. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Because people will happily fly in. They'll be like, "Oh, look, here's a space," and they'll plop this thing down and then go away and never really participate. But that's a really key and important part of making sure that the developers are still around.
Right.
And also, what you guys are all talking about is maintaining an engaged community so that Roblox is around for another 10, 16 years, rather than just saying, hey, we're really big right now, and that's fine, we're not going to innovate. Now, we have talked about some of the exciting emerging technologies that you guys are working on. Now I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that are the next step. These are the things that you really, really want to have happen, but either you don't know how to make it happen, or you think you know how to make it happen, but it's just not working. So I'm going to start with you, Kiran.
Yeah, so challenges-wise, I can give you two examples. One is with the nature of avatars being a collection of parts that users expect and developers expect to be able to mix and match. That is pretty novel in the industry, and that introduces a full range of technical complexities which traditional computer graphics does not work in. So yeah, the ability to design algorithms that works with this combinatorialism, that's a hard word to say.
That's really hard to say.
Of parts is a very interesting geometry problem. But the way we are trying to approach this, and also the ability to sort of drive emotions in these characters using your own face and voice, both of those, the way we are approaching it is by combining machine learning with input from expert artists. So we think that most users on the platform should not have to think about how their avatar moves. It should just work. And most developers on the platform also don't need to have a huge background in building characters for movies and games, but they should be able to produce interesting characters on the platform. So that can be empowered if you have a lot of data sets that we build in-house with artists who are experts, and combine that with machine learning algorithms, with scientists who are munging with those data. So that's how we are thinking about approaching problems using data, deep learning, and artists working together.
Have you had anybody in your team sort of throw something in from left field and you've thought, oh my God, I haven't thought about that. That's fantastic. Let's bring this in.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah.
And it's and I think Roblox developers are really good at that. Not just our team; they put together experiences that we never think about, as other panelists were saying here. The challenge is when you want to deploy these things at scale across all kinds of devices. There's a notion of level of detail, which is pretty common in computer graphics, but that concept doesn't exist in machine learning yet.
Right.
So what we are trying to do is bring some of the ideas of level of detail into deep learning algorithms, and that's an area of innovation that we are excited about pushing into the industry.
That is very exciting, because I can see that then translating into other applications outside. What about in economy? What are some of the technical challenges that are emerging that you guys are really, that you're looking for solutions at the moment?
Yeah, for technology challenges, just defining the ad formats. So traditional ad tech background has clear definition of what an impression is, what a click-through rate is, and we are defining a category of advertisers, right? Immersive ads. So it is a partnership between the brand and the developer and Roblox. Like there are three parties involved to create that perfect experience and take it further to do a real-world transaction. So there is no real definition of brand ads, performance. It's literally everything. And industry doesn't have a blueprint of whether that is impression. If, say, I'm a game developer and I introduce a character to come to talk to you about Nike or other brands, is that an ad or is that part of an experience? And how do we fairly bill or ask, like brands have to have the report of whether that was an ad or that was part of an experience, and how does the money get split? And these are all novel problems that we are dealing with, and we have to be very fair to all the parties involved.
That is super, super interesting just from the user's point of view as
Right.
well, and how
Right.
you're kind of conceptualizing that.
Right.
In terms of service, in terms of the exchange.
Policies, the
Yeah.
technology, and running that at scale is just one part of the problem. And second, as I said, marketplace, right? When we open up user-generated content, anybody creating their own items, making them limited and putting up for sale, which is traded and retraded, how do you control that when there's millions of transactions every day? How do you make sure that it's not raced to the bottom? That itself is a complicated problem.
Extremely complicated. Race to the bottom. We've heard a lot about that in the internet lately. Let's not do it in Roblox, shall we? And Antoni, what about with developers? Is this when we get to talk about open cloud?
Sure, we can talk about open cloud. I think there are there's an idea I want to share. So the things that we release, we have users who are very advanced, running teams of 50 plus people, and some of the creators are more junior or younger. And so we have a spectrum of use cases that we need to support. And I think when we're making these world scale systems that are supported around the globe, I think it's very important that we get the user experience correctly. A lot like Kiran and Kavita have been talking about, it's actually key to making sure that the product succeeds is how the user is using it. And so as we're designing systems for the developers to operate their businesses, everything from I want a store that Aleks is level 55 and Kavita is level 58, all the way to maybe progress or the creations that they're making within that game to how they host their customer support dashboards. We have to constantly think about different user perceptions. And so this is where we could try to solve that problem, but getting it right is nearly impossible. And I think it also changes over time. And that's why we really focused on empowering the developers to solve their own problems. If they're wanting to host a website and they need to interface with Roblox in a way, can we help them and build a first-class solution that allows for them to solve their own problems? And so this is where Open Cloud really what is making all of our cloud APIs accessible via the open internet through secure and modern authentication, so then they can solve their own problems. We've seen people build things in PHP all the way to the other side of the spectrum in JavaScript or something like that, and interface with our cloud endpoints. And so this is a challenging thing while we're getting it right and seeing how the users adopt it. And so this is something that we're constantly iterating on.
Well, this leads me nicely into a question about mistakes that you have seen that either you have made and that you're willing to admit in a public forum on the record that you've made. Please, by all means, failure, et cetera. Or that other people have made that you've learned from. So I'm going to start.
Kavita's first? No.
No. You set yourself up for this one, so you going, you diving in.
I think an example is when you build a system like a data storage system, and we're tailoring it to people who want to just build something. We want to get their 0 to 1, 1 to 100 imagination going as fast as we can. Sometimes we've forgotten, hey, well, they might abuse the system. And I think this is an example where they might just spam our system and overflow our databases or overload us from a scale perspective. And so we have to revisit that, and we have to make sure that our systems are protected and aware of all the different uses and abuse vectors that are possible. When you're building these generic systems, there is a level of abuse that is quite open, because if someone wanted to, they could abuse it. And so we have had incidents like this in the past, and we're always very responsive and try to our best. But it is something that's an ongoing challenge that will probably never end. It's a whack-a-mole game.
Yeah, it is. And so much of it is about sort of imagining unintended consequences, right? And I'm wondering how you do that at a high level, to look across the engineering team, to think about how you can cut off at the pass any unintended consequences.
Yeah, so I would say one of the best and hardest things about being at Roblox is the amount we scrutinize long-term plans and strategy. It's where myself and my peers kind of at the C level probably spend 80% of our time with the teams, with the idea that if we get that right, they know how to execute, they can get stuff right, going the right way. So, like the folks here, they're responsible for owning it, but they get, is grilled too strong,
Look at their faces.
Hopefully not.
Their faces say everything.
And we really poke and prod because we know that there's so many unintended consequences, particularly when your creator community can go do anything with the stuff, and like specifically the things you never imagined they would do. We do a lot of that. It goes back to some of those first principles I mentioned about we're not going to break anyone and so on. And so that's the majority of my job, of my peers' jobs, is really just poke on that strategy, make sure it's really rock solid. There isn't a lot of, and we'll figure that out when we get there. That doesn't fly much in Roblox. In many other companies, that's not just something that happens, it's a strength. It's the way you should run those companies. For Roblox, we take a little bit of a different approach, that it's, no, we really want to think this through in all its myriad forms before we move forward.
So I want to go back and get more granular. You don't need to admit any of the grillings that Dan has done to you, Kavita, but do you have any examples of mistakes that have either been made here or that you have learned from, or mistakes elsewhere that you've learned from?
Oh, tons.
Great, we've got the rest of the afternoon.
So I think we tried launching ad product that didn't work quite well. And I get the philosophy of our C-levels now, because they don't want ads just to be these annoying, irritating thing that prevents you. You have to endure that, and then you go to your consumer experience. So that's why we are always challenged, especially by Dan, to think about, like, you're getting a chance to define what ads mean in metaverse. Why are you being boxed in terms of, like, you have to do it this way, like other ad tech companies have done. So I think, and a lot of things can go wrong in ads targeting, right? How do you make sure you're targeting the right audience, but also make sure that their security and privacy is protected? And Roblox is very serious about security and safety. So making sure the relevance of the ad and the safety is always a very tricky balance.
Just really make sure you tweak it as much as possible. An avatar.
Yeah.
Has
Avatar.
anybody's face melted off?
That would be a good effect.
When they didn't expect it.
Yeah, well, that would be an interesting effect. But I think the Roblox spin on this, and I think what's unique about thinking about the avatar problem from Roblox perspective is the how you define the schema, again, the DNA. And that's something that Dan and Dave keep asking us at all the meetings. And the reason why that is important is, we tried introducing the facial stuff last year. And one of the things that we did not think through at that point in time was some of the internal representation of how a face would move was exposed. And so there was a higher level way of controlling the face, and then which we wanted developers to use. And then there was the high level setup was driving a lower level representation, which was also exposed in that version that we put out as beta. And very quickly, we learned from the community that the community can do all kinds of unintended things if they had access to this lower level implementation. And even though the lower level implementation was always available in Roblox, the fact that you tied them together in a way that is super accessible allows them to do things that you wouldn't want them to do. So the moral of the story, at least our learning was, hey, abstract complexity out as much as possible, and only think very hard about what is being exposed to the community, and that ensures longevity of the API. And we learned it, and we changed it, and we relaunched it, and it was a good learning for us.
Yeah, it is always iterative when you're creating complexity. always, always iterative. I want to now look at some more brass tacks about how you guys build out your teams and how you ensure innovation happens within the teams. I mean, it definitely sounds like you bat around ideas amongst yourselves, I'm imagining, as well as within your team. So I want to find out a little bit more about that. Kavita, I wanted to come to you first to talk about that and how you are who with the innovation. No, we've mentioned just break it straight down. We don't need the articles and all of the other words in a sentence. But we talked a little bit about how economists are involved in some way with your teams, but also who are the other types of people that comprise the economy team?
So we have data science, we have engineers, we have even in engineers, back-end machine learning, all sorts of engineers, front-end. We work very closely with QA and reliability engineers. And then, of course, product plays a very crucial part of the tweaks and pivots that are required in product. And coming back to innovation, it's a very interesting topic because I don't think that you wake up one day and have this brilliant idea. It is a very iterative process. And what we emphasize on is we launch a lot of experiments and we learn. It's a continuous learning experiment. So learning methodology where even an intern can have a really good idea. How do you make sure that they are able to validate? And how does your experimentation framework scale? So you can launch on like certain percentage of your users and validate that data and bring it back to an experiment review and discuss it with the team. And that's how we learn and the bigger innovation actually happens.
That's fun, right? That means then it's almost like a lab where everybody has the opportunity to play around and poke around at a system, obviously within an enclosed space.
Right.
Does that ring true for the developer platform as well?
Yeah, I think that is a very important aspect, and we definitely do a lot of experimentation. I think one thing that I personally look for in engineers and in talent is that I want systems thinkers and people who are really passionate about products. So when I'm interviewing someone, I'll give you guys all a tip on how to pass an interview with Antoni, but I want someone who has strong opinions about a product and that will talk about the trade-offs. There's almost no perfect answer on a hard problem, and so it's about weighing the trade-offs, but about that product. And I think if an engineer has the technical ability to do the job as well as that trait, I think that I've seen a lot of success with that. So I always look for systems thinking and the passion for the product. And I think that's been a really great recipe for success.
If I could add to that.
Yeah, please.
Just something we do that I think it's a little bit unique. Innovation is so important here that even if you're fresh out of school and you're applying for a job here, one of the first things we have you do in the process is you go and you play a Roblox game. But this is a very special Roblox game backed by a bunch of learning scientists and psychologists, and it measures a bunch of things. It measures systems thinking, also measures innovation and problem-solving ability. And we do that because we thought about what is most important to success here at Roblox and a career at Roblox. And we hire folks straight out of school. We're hoping they'll be here 10 plus years, right? That's what we're really aiming for. I'm hoping today I'm hiring the person who in a few years will have my job, right? And innovation is so core to that success that it's built into that experiment. It's one of the first gates you get through before you kind of get in the standard, let's do a coding exercise and all that sort of stuff. And we actually weight it more than we weight coding performance and things like that. So it's really core and central to the way we think about talent in this company.
It's nice that you do have a company that has been around for a long time because you have been able to pick out those core essential features of what somebody can do as well, rather than just sort of throwing things at the wall. You've iterated that process as well, I'm
Right,
imagining.
we're always, the innovation applies in a sense to how we do innovation. Like we're always thinking about how can we do innovation better and how do we change our own processes and do a better job with that. So we don't just leave the innovation at the technical front, but kind of on how we approach people, even compensation, so on. Like we're always trying to do a better job and improve the system we're building.
Kiran, tell me a little bit about how you build out your teams for innovation in Avatar.
Yeah, avatars, I think, is a really focused area in some sense, with a lot of domain expertise in specific areas. So in my team, we have deep learning experts, and we have artists who have built these characters in for movies and games and such. So a lot of deep understanding of what to build to produce a believable character. And you have engineers who are really strong in executing, iterating, optimizing, and deploying the algorithms that people produce and scale it. So it's three groups with three skill sets working closely together. And I think that's the key, is being able to understand that producing a believable character with a new medium like avatars requires you to actually, it's a brand new challenge, it's a new frontier. So it involves you working very closely together with other experts. So that's that ability to work across disciplines and to collaborate and deploy to developers and before users, and then be able to iterate based on feedback, and scale across different devices. So that it's a lot of different things, but it's also what makes Roblox very special, because the appetite for doing something like this, even though it's really hard and challenging, the leadership understands that these things can take a long time, and as long as we iterate towards it and produce results and get people excited and using these technologies, they'll evolve.
Yeah. Now, it isn't just the scale of the platform that is scaling at Roblox. Like, it's the scale of the workforce as well. And I wanted to talk with you, Dan, specifically about how you are managing that scale. Because going from 30 employees to over 1,800 is a huge growth curve, which I'm imagining has its own growing pains. So how are you working to ensure that the people that you bring in, mesh with the Roblox culture that exists now, and also, how are the growing pains playing out that you're trying to innovate around for the future?
Right. And by the way, particularly difficult in COVID, where we have more
Yeah.
employees who joined, after we closed our offices than before. And now we're in our offices again. We're starting to come back in. It's not perfect yet, but we're starting to do this. But we all know that building culture over Zoom is just a lot harder than building culture face to face. Part of this goes to almost the same way, in some weird ways, the same way we focus on innovation. We really do have a concept, almost like a hierarchy on how small teams fit into bigger teams, and the kind of responsibility and the autonomy they have. And what I've really seen is, despite the massive growth, new folks are still learning the culture and the tone from existing folks like Antoni, who's been around forever. I've only been here 2.5 years, but now I feel I've been here like forever, just by soaking in the culture of the place. Of course, culture is a big part of what we look for during the interview process. That itself's not perfect. But I think in general, we're much more willing to focus on, are you a fit for Roblox, than do you have exactly the skills we need, right? We're always willing to give people, in the same way we take a long-term view on features, we're willing to take a long-term view on people. They can always learn the skills they need to learn.
Yeah.
If they're not a fit, if they're not excited about the community and willing to put their community first, they're not willing to take longer to figure something out and innovate versus just get something out the door, they're probably not going to do really well here. And the few folks I could think of who haven't, it's generally more around that than just, they just weren't able to bring the skills to the table that we wanted to bring. It tends to be much more that way. And that's something we just keep focused on. At the same time, we're always thinking about how do we scale better. So we have an entire team we have a unique role, a peer of mine, our chief systems officer, whose job is to really innovate the sorts of tools we bring to bear that allow us to communicate better, that allow us to check in with each other better, allow us to understand how the company's performing and where our strengths and our weaknesses are. That's where all that work around building assessment and learning systems sits, right? So we're always investing in taking a unique approach to make sure we have the glue, kind of minimum bureaucracy, and then bring the tools that can help us glue is kind of the approach we're taking. And through that, reinforce the culture.
It is good that you have somebody else doing that because that's a whole bunch of extra stuff going on.
A lot of work, yeah. I'm busy now.
Well, I'm gonna wind my part of the conversation down because I could continue to ask you guys questions all afternoon, but I think it's important that our contributors who are virtual can actually participate as well. I'm excited from hearing what you guys are talking about. In our pre-conversations, I never actually got the meat of everything that we were talking about. So this has really enthused me about the innovations and how you guys are planning to incorporate innovation into your teams, as well as dealing with the problems of scale. So right now, we're going to turn to Meredith in the audience, who has a huge bunch of questions that have come in from our virtual participants. By all means,
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. So our first question is actually for Kiran. And it's, what are your thoughts on Roblox Studios supporting offline use?
Offline news?
Offline use.
That might be better for Antoni, to be honest.
Yeah.
Let's let the developer guy.
Yeah, good call. Let's let.
So Roblox Studio is currently a connected or online product, and you have to be connected to the internet to use it, to use the full functionality of it. I think we've obviously talked about it. I've even seen builds before many years ago of offline. But I think to get the full experience, we want you connected to the cloud, working with your team. And I think that is something that you have to be connected to the internet with and and I think that is the best experience that we've seen the best results from. So Roblox Studio currently is an online product.
Maybe I can just add to that briefly. We view the way Roblox runs as such a connected back-end system oriented thing. It's not just what you see on your phone. And so in order to be able to develop to that, you need to be able to access those systems. So right now we're saying, geez, the development experience would be so crippled if you're limited to the local device you're on and you can't access those services and systems that really right now we think it's tightly integrated. And so we're going to probably stick with online being part of that picture.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Next question we have is for Kavita. If you had to choose one monetization strategy to rule them all, would it be advertising or digital content marketplaces, and why?
It's difficult to choose between your children. These are literally two orgs under me. So I think both of them are equally important because if we just focus on ad side and business side and campaign management, we'll just probably dilute our experience. And the whole purpose we are called economy and not revenue is because we are balancing marketplace and the dynamics and the demand and supply, and not just, we could make a lot more money tomorrow if we just showed ads everywhere and dilute the experience, but that's not the whole philosophy of economy team. So I think both are equally important. I cannot choose.
Good enough for me. I like it. My next question is for Dan. So my son started playing Roblox around 5 years ago when he was 4 or 5 years old. There was a chat window, and I was pretty nervous about who he was able to talk to. Since then, I've seen chat appear, disappear, or have a number of different limitations. How do you manage child safety on the platform?
Yeah, so safety is pretty much always our top priority. I think since I've been here, at least I think for years going back, we take safety. We can't have a good community unless it's safe and civil. It just won't work on this platform. Remember, this is immersive, it's 3D, and so on. We have a large team. No one from that team is up here because we can only have 4, but who focus on this every day. It is unfortunately an adversarial game, right? In other words, it's not just staying still. People are always trying to abuse the system in new and exotic ways. It's a big investment. So first of all, parental controls to enable that or not are on the platform. But then going beyond that, just what's default, because not every parent can see and know what's going on, making sure that what you're seeing is age appropriate with a big distinction between under 13 and over 13. We also look at things of how do we mix communities when we place you into games, strong bias to just putting you in same age category things, right? It's not perfect. People can lie about their age online, of course, and so on. But it's also not just the chat, but who you're chatting with, and how do we control that better? And it's just something with a really large R&D investment where we're building better models, better screening, and watching that very, very carefully. That said, we found without chat, the experience isn't quite as much fun. And in fact, seeing in everyone's household with a Roblox kid, if they're not using our chat, they're probably using some other communication methods with their friends because these are such social experiences. So we'd rather keep it on platform whenever we can because at least then we can control it and not lose control, not lose the protections that we can put in place.
Makes sense. I guess this question, I'll start with Kiran, but I think all of you will probably have an answer to this. What is the one thing that people may not realize about the work that your team is doing?
These are very good questions.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job, virtual audience.
Yeah, I think the larger community of researchers who think about faces and avatars and tracking and animation don't necessarily understand the scale of challenges and the scale of creativity on the platform. So from a purely technical point of view, not many people in the research community are actually thinking about the problems that we actually face on the ground. So I guess these are opportunities for us to communicate the kinds of problems we work on. But yeah, that's probably the main thing. So the innovation, a lot of the innovations are coming from internal work. The variety of avatars and the characters and the experiences and the skill set of the developers who are putting together these experiences makes for a very complex R&D problem, and that combined with safety which is another element makes development very unique and different from other places in the industry.
I think that's actually a really interesting point, is that somebody like me comes along and wants to study Roblox, right? I've done that for other virtual worlds in the past, and not quite understanding, not quite recognizing exactly what is involved can actually really distract, can't it? So how are you guys separating the people like me when I come in and study Roblox from keeping us separate from what's actually going on? I think you mentioned that there is a research.
Oh yeah, we have really kicked it off in August, a Roblox research team. Its mission is to better connect us with the academic community and the academic community with Roblox. And a large part we want to do that is because we have all these interesting problems to work at that are different than maybe in some very interesting ways from the traditional problems that academic community has been focused on, right? And it's different from product development because product development often you don't have the time to breathe to really kind of distill that and have that collaboration, but it feeds into it. It's also not just pie in the sky stuff, it's how does it directly tie in. So you've heard about some of the problems Kiran's working on. We're looking at deep problems in how do we scale this out through systems. We have this dream someday of running a 50,000 person rock concert that can run on your iPhone 8, right? And doing that combination of front and back end. Safety is a big one. How do we better understand intent and what is safe speech and not? Because it doesn't necessarily just come down to vocabulary. We all know the most cutting insults can be said with the most innocent words, right? And how do we start to make the world civil and understand that sort of behavior? So there's a lot of really interesting problems there that kind of tie into some of the stuff Kiran was talking about.
What about for developer? What types of things are you working on that people would be surprised to know about?
Yeah, I think we've already talked about the longevity of the product and the contract, and so I think that is a very interesting one from an engineering perspective because when you're designing for the long view, it is a different style of engineering, and I think that's a really interesting and rewarding feat because it's not something just to build and then see the reaction. You have to do a little bit of the prep work before and then after, and make sure that your systems are appropriate for the short and long term. And I think this is a different style of thinking that I see everywhere with my peers at Roblox, and I think that is something that is challenging and frustrating at times because finding that right balance isn't always easy. Sometimes it's it's not obvious, and sometimes we can't even find it, and we have to walk away. But I do think that it is a very rewarding thing, and it's why I think we're all here solving problems.
Kavita, what about in economy?
Economy, I think people wouldn't realize how cross-functional it is because of the formats. We really are just starting to experiment with different formats, which can be classified as billable ads, which are so native, and the boundaries are very, very thin. I think that's an interesting problem. So we have to work with consumer teams across all the client teams. Then we have to work with finance team. Then the ad-facing brands team. So people don't realize how large and cross-functional engineers in an economy actually have to operate.
Our next question from the audience is for Dan. So there is a lot of emphasis on 3D experiences and virtual worlds. What about real-life experiences that incorporate digital experiences?
Now that is a really good question. I think that's a space where we're still trying to think about where the world may go and what that's going to look like, and what are the devices that are going to enable that well. That said, often, as is typical, our developer community can be ahead of us. I've seen some developers starting to incorporate, it starts as simply as mocking up a place that is in the real world so you can do something you couldn't do otherwise. We've seen school graduations during COVID done on Roblox. But I've also seen some experience where people are trying to plug in things around your current GPS location through an API they build into an experience that changes the way experience works. So being a platform, I think our goal on all of this is to provide the right tech to enable people to do whatever creative, crazy ideas they may have that we would never dream up. And I think we're trying to understand where that may go from how does virtual tie into physical world. But I bet anything we're going to learn that because our creators are going to find ways to hack their way there. And then we'll quickly say, well, okay, that looked really hard. How do we make that easier for them? So many things at Roblox happen that way. So I think that's an exciting space, and we should all keep an eye on it. I know I am.
We have time for one more question from the audience. So choose wisely.
Okay, I will. I think this one's interesting. So for new grads, junior software engineers, who are maybe looking to move from creating games to doing traditional software engineering inside Roblox, do you have any tips for them to make that jump?
I think we should.
Okay.
Head on over there. You step up.
I think by building systems and me and my systems, but by building systems and so if you're building a game and you're working on, I don't know, a maze generator, instead of just laying down a maze, you could get that probably done in some amount of time. You could invest in building that generator, and I think the same skills that to build a generic maze generator or any generic system will be applicable with most software jobs. And I think that attitude and approach to solving problems is almost always going to be worth it in the long term in your career because it extends your thinking, it twists your brain, and it makes you work a muscle that you don't have to. And I think that's the skill software engineers thrive on.
Maybe I'll just add, I think we have a lot of very successful staff at Roblox who got their start as creators on the platform. And particularly when you say someone who is new in their career, I think my best advice would be just jump in with both feet. You're not talking about someone who maybe has 20 years experience and you kind of bring that with you next job. The world is your oyster when you're starting your career, and things are so easy. And we love those sorts of folks at Roblox as long as you're committed. The people where that is more of a challenge when you really want to do is the creation process, and we are building a platform here. And it is certainly creative in the way we do it, but you're not creating the games and or experiences. So that may not be the best match. But if that's what you want to do, jump with both feet.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm excited by what I've heard today. sadly, I'm not going to jump in with both feet into Roblox because I would be one of those people on the research team getting in the way of you, Kiran, trying to make your avatars. But I think that anybody who is considering coming along to Roblox, I think what we've heard today is that it's a really thriving and an innovative place. It's very thoughtful the way you guys are dealing with both each of your specific tracks, but also with how you innovate to scale, both with scale within the community and scale within the company itself. And I know you wanted to say one quick thing before we sign off.
Sure, and that's, you heard a lot about how we're operating today. We have a grand vision, and to get that grand vision realized is going to take a lot of people. So we're always hiring. If you found this exciting, please check out our website. Our jobs are posted there. To the student who asked about how to get going in their career, look for our new college grad applications. Generally, I think that opens in the fall, and just go from there. So there's a lot of good work to do here. We'd love to have you join us.
Excellent. So if you are a problem solver, then you know where to go. I want to thank my fantastic guests this evening, Antoni, Choudhuri, Kavita, Kanetkar, Kiran, Bhat, and Dan Sturman. Thank you. And also thank you very much to our live audience who laughed at the most appropriate bits, who shuffled in your seats to remind us to keep things moving, and to our virtual audience for some fantastic questions. So thank you all very much, and do go to the website. For the rest of us, we're going across the way to have a little bit of a happy hour. Thank you very much for joining. Good job, guys.